Alright guys, today we're going to talk about the Nikon AF-P 10 to 20 millimeter 4.5 to 5.6G VR lens. Okay, so first of all, this is a DX lens, so it's designed for APS-C or crop sensor Nikon cameras. Apparently this lens works just fine with the FTZ adapter for mirrorless users out there. Okay, so right off the bat you'll want to check to make sure if your camera is compatible with AF-P lenses before you buy this guy. Okay, now some cameras are sort of compatible, and by that I mean they will mount the lens and focus with it just fine. There will just be certain limitations, for example the inability to turn off the vibration reduction mechanism, but just know ahead of time that if you want full compatibility you may have to update your firmware, or you simply may need to use a different camera. We're going to take a look at what's good, what's bad about the lens. We'll be looking at sample images. Let's get into it. So the first thing you may have noticed about this lens is just how tiny it is. Okay, it's positively tiny, especially given the fact that you are getting that ultra-wide range of 10 to 20. And to have an ultra-wide lens in something that fits in the palm of your hand is frankly amazing. This lens also takes regular 72 millimeter filters. Okay, so you don't need any fancy filter systems. All your regular filters will work just fine. It's only 230 grams, it's incredibly light, which makes it perfect for travel and walk-around purposes. And even though this lens is plasticky, it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel hollow, it still feels like you're holding a modern electronic device. The lens is ready to use as soon as you mount it to the camera. You don't need to unlock anything or retract anything. It's shortest when it's zoomed in all the way to 20 millimeters, and when you zoom out to 10 millimeters, which happens within just a quarter of a turn. So this is really quick. This motion to get from 10 to 20 just speeds everything up when you're using this lens for a walk around town. This lens has a VR mechanism, okay, vibration reduction, which is good for around 1 to 2 stops. You can absolutely get away with sharp photos at speeds as slow as 1/10 of a second, maybe even slower if your hands are steadier. This lens handles flaring and ghosting very well, as you will see in the sample pictures, and has only a slight amount of chromatic aberration, which disappears after one click of a button in Lightroom. Now, you'll notice the plasticky construction of the lens, and we will of course get into that. But one thing you should note is that a lot of stuff has been sacrificed to the god of sharpness. You see, where this lens stands out, and the main reason for purchasing it, aside from its very versatile zoom range at the wide end, is the fact that it is sharp. It does give you very good results, especially when stopped down to something like f8, right? That's where the lens really starts shining. Now it's worth noting that the lens is not as sharp at the extreme end of 20, so it's perfectly fine from 10 to 18, but then when you get to 20 it does soften up a little bit, and you just need to stop it down a bit further to get to critical sharpness. Don't let the size of the lens fool you. There's actually quite a complicated optical formula in here. This lens has 14 elements in 11 groups, and 3 of the elements are actually aspherical. So this is what the lens looks like on a D3400. As you can see, it's positively tiny, and combined with a small camera body like this makes for a very compact walk-around package. You can barely hear it focusing. I don't know if you guys can tell. We have the beep confirmation. I'm going to put the microphone right up to it. Very quiet autofocus, which makes it perfect for video use. The focus is also extremely fast, to the point where I'm often focusing 2 or 3 times because I just don't trust myself that it focused correctly the first time. Now, because I'm using it mostly for architecture photography, rapid focusing isn't that important, but it's good to know that the lens focuses fast, it focuses accurately, and it will not let you down. It has a convenient manual focus override ring here, so if you ever want to suddenly start using manual focus, you can override the autofocus using this ring at the front. I generally never use it, but it's good to know that it's there, and it does feel very, very smooth and solid. It's shortest at 20 millimeters, and then when you zoom it out just a quarter turn, it comes out to 10, and it's really not that much longer. So what's bad about this lens? As you may have noticed with the other AF-P lenses, the construction is extremely plasticky. Okay, even the mount itself is plastic. That may worry some of you who are used to metal mount lenses. This nameplate here is actually a sticker. It's not even a plastic or metal nameplate. This "Made in Thailand" here has been etched into the lens itself. As you can see, there is no distance scale anywhere on this lens, so good luck pre-focusing it to infinity. Okay, you have to do that in camera. There is no VR on and off switch. There isn't even a automatic focus, manual focus switch. After all the reviews primarily are about sharpness. Everybody prioritizes sharpness. So they do give you sharpness and they don't give you much of anything else in terms of exterior features. It's not weather sealed. Okay, that's one of the big issues with this lens. I think if you are going to be using it in extremely humid or wet environments, I'm sure people have used it successfully in environments like that. I've been using this lens in dry conditions, no rain, no snow, just to make sure that nothing happens to it, because the lens is not weather sealed. The lens is also a slow lens in the sense that it's 4.5 to 5.6. Okay, it's not a 2.8 lens, so it's not going to be great for astrophotography. Now, people have done extensive testing of this lens at different apertures and focal lengths, and the general conclusion is that the lens is perfectly sharp from 10 to around 18 millimeters. It's just that at 20 millimeters, the extreme long end of the range, the lens isn't as sharp. So if you're using it at 20 millimeters, you might have to stop it down to at least f11 to get to an acceptable level of sharpness. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's sharp in the center pretty much no matter what your setting is, but it's all about bringing those corners back into critical sharpness. The zoom lenses are often the best in the middle of their focal range, not at the extreme ends. Unfortunately, we tend to use zoom lenses at extreme ends because our hands just naturally zoom in all the way. Okay, so if you're specifically looking for a 20 millimeter lens, maybe this one isn't the right one for you. This lens, just like all ultra-wide zooms, does suffer from some barrel distortion. Most of it is easily correctable in Photoshop. Now, this lens is a DX lens, okay, so it's not for full frame use. It does theoretically cover the full frame sensor from 13 millimeters all the way to 20 millimeters, so you can use it on a full frame camera. You're just going to get a bit of vignetting, okay, and it's not going to be optimal just due to the field curvature issues inherent with wide-angle lenses like this. As I mentioned, flaring and ghosting are well controlled, but if you are shooting this lens in direct, bright sunlight, you might want to put on the included lens hood. Now, the lens hood is even more plasticky than the lens itself. Clearly, not much effort has been placed into the construction of this lens hood, okay, but at least it serves its purpose, and it's very lightweight, and Nikon was nice enough to include it. Now, it does make the whole package look a little more ridiculous. Priced at $300, I believe this lens is an absolutely great value for those of you who want to get into landscape, interiors, architecture, that kind of thing, or just want a decent ultra-wide zoom complement some of your other lenses. Do you absolutely need this lens? Probably not. Is this the first lens that I recommend people buy? No. If you want to do architecture and even landscapes, there's nothing stopping you from using the regular 18 to 55 kit lens. It will do just fine for basic use. But if you want to take your pictures to the next level, challenge yourself to work with foreground elements that are just going to be a lot more prominent, this lens is a great lens to start with, and it won't break the bank. Now, I want to show you guys some of the photos I've been taking with this lens, specifically in the field of architecture photography. I've become interested in this genre, and this lens was purchased specifically to get me some nice shots of exteriors. Given that it's wintertime in the northern hemisphere, I didn't have too much light to work with. Nevertheless, the vast majority of these shots were taken handheld, just walking around town with the D3400 and this lens. And the lens delivered. You stop it down just a bit, you don't get too crazy with the ISO, and you will get perfectly acceptable sharp photos. If there's any interest, I could do a separate video on my top tips for beginner architecture photography. But in the meantime, I just want to show you guys a bunch of photos, both straight out of camera and then after some basic editing in Lightroom. No Photoshop for this series, just basic adjustments in Lightroom. I loved using this lens. For me, it represents amazing value. You combine it with a cheap body like a D3400 available secondhand for about 200 bucks. And for a grand total of $500, you have a very lightweight, compact package that gets the job done for landscapes, for architecture, for basic interior work. You could absolutely use it for real estate, mounted to a tripod. The fact that we can get this quality at this price was probably unthinkable even 10 years ago, and it's amazing what modern optical engineering has given us. So to summarize, do I recommend this lens? Yes, if you need it. Okay, if you do need a wide angle lens, if you're certain that you need it, okay, if you've shot with a kit lens and you're constantly thinking, man, I just wish I had a few extra millimeters at the wide end, then I would consider investing in one of these. I would say not everyone needs one of these, but for certain genres of photography, it's just more fun to have access to a wide angle lens. So if you guys have any thoughts on this lens or other wide angle lenses for the Nikon system, let us know in the comment section. And as always, thank you for watching and subscribe for more.